Hey there, boys and girls, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Today, I speak with Brandon Robb from Heroic Athletics. Heroic Athletics are all about optimizing human performance of first responders. They are fostering that fitness and athleticism to help all of us former athletes, individuals who want to be ready to tackle the test of fitness and athleticism anytime, anywhere, exactly how we do. By breaking down fitness and performance into 5 key elements, which Brandon is going to talk about today, we empower the individual who is seeking a balanced approach and delivering and kicking ass, taking names every level of fitness and athleticism so they can rise up to any situation that we may face as first responders. A big thanks once again to our long-term sponsor, William Wood Watches, who bring us, of course, our Chivalrous Collection, Bronze Edition, Valiant Collection, and coming to 2021 from the 1st of March is their new Triumph Collection. William Wood Watches has the vision to be the leading sustainable watch brand that upcycles rescue service materials for a new life, once forgotten, now reborn. People that wear these watches know they represent. They know that it is not just a timepiece. They're a statement of unity, respect, and bravery, which anyone wearing on our watch can proudly feel like they share that value with anyone else they see wearing it. It's like that badge of pride. It's like that symbol that you believe in something greater. If you want to become part of the William Wood Watches family, head over to williamwoodwatches.com, where Johnny and the team have some beautiful, beautiful pieces to share with us. Like I said, in March of this year, you will see the new Triumph Collection being launched. I had a sneak peek at it the other day. It's absolutely stunning. Hope you get in there and have a look. Only the top 100 existing customers who have been hand-picked by William Wood Watches get to have a glimpse at this before it goes on sale. So get over, have a look, get yourself registered, and check out some of the incredible stuff at williamwoodwatches.com. Massive shout out and thank you to one of our new sponsors, Venari Group UK. Quality builder of emergency vehicles, unrivaled degree of quality, passion, obsession for customer satisfaction, and they drive that British manufacturer to its fullest. We had Ollie as a guest on the podcast quite some time ago, seeing Venari go from strength to strength. They are doing some incredible things in 2021, as well as bringing so much manufacturing back here to the UK. So whether it's fire, healthcare, equipment, on the podcast, we only align ourselves with absolute premium quality, and that, of course, includes people such as Venari Group. Now, all of our sponsors have a real, authentic aspect to being a sponsor for the podcast, and Venari Group is really breaking boundaries, stepping forward onto the front line, supporting our emergency services workers all over the world. I was up there not too long ago checking out their British-built Z-Class air crash truck. I mean, that thing is pretty incredible. I'm a big kid in a toy shop when I see some of the incredible vehicles that Venari is putting out there on the front line to keep all of our boys and girls in the emergency services safe and sound when they are out there helping people in the community, kicking ass and taking names. Thank you once again for coming back and checking us out on the Firefighters Podcast. The heroic ladies and gents will be joining us today, and I know you're going to enjoy my conversation with Brandon. I really enjoyed it. Super cool guy. I always like reaching the arm across to that international platform and connecting with all of these amazing boys and girls across the world. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for checking back in with the Firefighters Podcast. I hope you love this one, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.
There we go.
There he is.
Should be working now. Apologize for that.
No dramas, brother. Welcome to the Firefighters Podcast, Brandon. How you doing?
Good.
You're here with us from Heroic Athletics. I first saw your guys, honestly, because your goddamn Instagram looks incredible. And I can't help but scan through it and feel incredibly motivated. But it wasn't until I jumped over to the website that I was really hooked. So there's yourself, there's Kate, and there's Tyler, and it's fostering fitness for athleticism for first responders, former athletes, and individuals to be ready to tackle the test of fitness and athleticism anytime, anywhere. I mean, if that ain't a mouthful of motivation, I'm not sure what it is.
It's a little wordy at times, but yeah.
No, man, it rolls off the tongue. I love it. It's secretly jealousy that you're hearing there. That's what's coming through, I promise you. You first got in, you were telling me before we came on that the owner of your local gym was a firefighter. Is that right? Because was it your family that was firefighter based, or I forget which one it was?
Tyler specifically. He comes from, we'll say, a line of firefighters. My background was probably for the past decade has been working with a lot of different frontline workers, paramedics, firefighters, police officers. And then when I moved cities a number of years ago to a different gym, the gym I worked at actually, they didn't market or advertise that they specialized in working with firefighters, but the owner of that gym was a firefighter himself. And so basically there was him, his wife, and then at least at that time, I was kind of the coach that filled in the rest of the time slots, when he was on shift or working. And so that gave me an opportunity or more exposure, we'll say, to working with firefighters. And it had always been a line of work that I was interested in. But as we were talking before, I kind of fell more into the fitness side of things.
What is it about first responders and not necessarily firefighters, but just first responders in general that you think, because I think it's very different in the UK. I spoke to a few American-based firefighters, French, South African, but also we had a Canadian one. Dave Mason's based over there as well. And I feel like from a pride aspect to a fitness aspect, the whole thing feels like there's a higher bar over there. I feel like there's a lot more pride that goes on in first responders and emergency, and I think there should be. But I feel like that maybe adds a bit of an additional pressure. How have you found working with emergency services or frontline workers different from your average Joe public?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the firefighter or the first responder themselves. I do think there's probably the world that you're in and the people you talk to. Yes, there is a high sense of pride, but there still is massive ground to be made up in terms of if we're talking about the physical and the athleticism, the training, the fitness side of the occupation. There is a lot of ground to cover, and it does vary. A lot of my clients are kind of all over. I have some clients in the UK, I have some clients in Canada, some kind of throughout the US, and it really, I think there is. If I look at the grand scheme, there's two identities. There's the first responders who, like yourself, and probably the people listening to this podcast, and the people who are they identify with taking their role as a first responder very serious, and part of that is the fitness aspect, the athleticism, obviously the physical capabilities that you need to be able to do your job. The other identity that where there's maybe some opportunity is I have come across a number of people who get on with their departments, be it as an LEO or in fire, and their motivation for getting on is it's a quote unquote cushy job, where you get you get lots of time off, especially with fire, right?
Totally, brother. And I sort of want to catch you with the fact that I agree with you, but also disagree with you slightly in a sense that a lot of our listeners are head over heels in love with like the emergency services. But to be honest, I'm sort of agreeing with you in the fact that fitness for a lot of them actually doesn't play a massive aspect in their life. And this is what I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of like the old should versus musts analogy, whereas most people, like we talk about general public again, we feel like we should be fitter, but ultimately there's no overwhelming non-negotiable push, unlike perhaps the role of an emergency services operator, where at some point, as a law enforcement operator, you might actually have to call upon that skill set. You may need to chase somebody down, and that's where it is a must. And if you don't look after it, it might cost you your life, but also might cost you the life of a member of the community. So that, for people that aren't fitness involved, because I know a lot of people in the emergency services who just get into it because they're like, I just want to help people and I love what it stands for. And actually the fitness bit is bloody annoying and awkward for some people, and a lot of people, I think.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
But also you said about how it entrains like this whole time off aspect. And I totally agree with you. Now, a lot of fire stations in the UK, we have a gym provided for us. But I was speaking to, the lady's name escapes me, Amanda Ross. And she runs a company, I believe in Canada as well, although I may be completely wrong there. And they do a lot of stuff for emergency service operators, but a lot of police officers don't have gyms. Police, law enforcement stuff, they don't have gyms on their stations, because I think fire service, definitely, I'll put my hand up here, we're like the cushiest of a lot of the emergency services in terms of flexibility of time. We're given an hour every shift to exercise. So it's kind of like the whole thing's forcing it into do. Whereas I feel, and I'd love to hear your opinion, a law enforcement perspective, it's kind of like, that's your responsibility to manage your own fitness. Just be fit. And then how do you see that more? Or
I think across the geographical areas that I work with, that is very common. Most fire calls are going to have some type of, even if it's janky as hell, they're going to have some type of fitness facility. And I think also just the nature of fire is you have a group of individuals, I mean, let's be honest, typically men, where there's a lot of free time if you're in between calls, and it's either eat or workout, and like that's kind of falls to you. But when it comes to LEOs, one of the big things is it has to be within the identity of the individual that they need to take their fitness and athleticism seriously, and that goes for across the board: paramedics, firefighters, LEOs. But with this is the case with both fire and LEOs, but with police, for example, in most cases, they don't have, like, the fitness does fall on the responsibility of the individual. The problem in most departments is that there's requirements for fitness to get the job in the first place. But once you have the role, once you are a police officer, there's no repercussions other than a situation you might face on the job.
Do they not do annual fitness tests and stuff like that? I thought they would.
They do. My experience, at least with the clients that I work with, is that most departments, if they do have an annual fitness test, it's optional at best, and there's no repercussions if you fail. You get placed on you get a hand slap at best. And so, which is kind of concerning, because
really concerning, I think. Really concerning. For them, as much as it is for the people they serve, I'd be like, for you, for your interest first and foremost, let's be selfish and say, for you and your family and the people, you want to be fit and healthy. Let's forget the job for a second. But that's a scary thing, that the fact it never gets tested, and there's so much onus on the individual, like you say. Some departments, some police departments are a little bit more ahead of the curve in terms of the support systems. But even then, you have, like, I look at Edmonton Police here in Alberta and Canada. They have arguably one of the best systems when it comes to fitness. Actually, the head CSCS, he sits on the National Strength and Conditioning. I don't know if he's on the board, but he's definitely spoken at tons of their events. Of their tactical strength and conditioning events. So their department is ahead of the curve. I think they have, I could be misquoting this, I think they have 4 coaches or trainers working with 1,800 police officers. Oh, so they do employ sort of like strength and conditioning coaches, and they do have like fitness or wellness advisors or whatever we're going to call them. Yeah,
but I mean, 4 people for 1,800, like the impact they can have is honestly really small. So, that's where guys like yourself, like myself, can really fill a need, whether it's education or training programs or whatever. But again, you're right, it falls on the individual, and they have to take ownership of that. And like I said, they have to have that identity of like, I'm going to own this. I'm going to.
Do you feel like it's easier because I want to speak about the differences again there between paramedics, police, and fire service, because fire departments and crews tend to operate inside, and like in the UK, it's like a minimum of 4 people that'll be on a crew, and you would be very unlucky if you couldn't find at least one other person who at least will do some form of physical fitness. There may be 2 that don't, but there'll always be at least one person, and if you get a good crew, then you'll all train together and you'll all push yourselves. But I know, with a lot of police, they ride solo. Most, they'll ride with a partner. And again, paramedics, or as we see them in the UK, they might even drive alone on their own in a vehicle, in a first responder's vehicle. So it's very lonely. And I mean, we talk about things like value association. Do you think there's I don't want to say unfairness, but do you think that's a factor?
A factor in
like the value of being around people who are also potentially got a vested interest in being fitter and healthier for the days when you are not quite feeling like you want to hit it. Do you see any differences there?
Yeah, 100%. That's actually one of the things that I, with the clients that I work with, more heavier intensive programs that involve a lot more coaching, is one of the things we talk about is environment. And, for a firefighter, they're kind of automatically in the environment where, you're surrounded by guys who, more often than not, firefighters come from some type of athletic background. They played sports as a kid or something like that. And so that's part of what drew them to that occupation. And while that might also be true for police and for paramedics, paramedics, you're typically on a 2-man truck. And police, you're right. You're typically solo at best. You have one partner in the vehicle with you. So, and you're not with those 2 occupations too. You're also not staying in a hall,
or you're in a fixed location. Put. You're out on the truck, you're out on the squad car, you're out in the vehicle, for all of the shift.
100%. Yeah. And so, you're not surrounded by that same environment 24/7, so to speak. And so, it definitely, I think, it's easier for firefighters to, we'll say, make physical fitness a part of their identity, just because they're surrounded by it, right? It's part of the culture, and it needs to be part of the culture with LEOs and with paramedics, and again, it's part of the culture within military. But there's lots of education. I know you know this. There's lots of educational opportunities when it comes to that. 100%. But a big factor to anybody, like I said, seeing that shift in identity, or a big factor in them just succeeding and being fit and being physically capable, having the strength and the speed and whatnot to be successful in the job. The environment they're surrounded with and the support systems around them to kind of foster that identity is incredibly important.
I saw this in a blog you guys wrote recently as well. I think it was one where you were speaking about the home workouts and the essential aspects of that, and I'm pretty confident the first one you had written down on there was like a workout buddy. Do you know what I mean? Was the accountability aspect of it. So even for those, because I know you train a lot of members of the public as well, but even, this is especially relevant, home workouts have always been sort of good, and some people like them, but especially during lockdown, it's been prolific, and I imagine this is where the vast majority of you've had to step up the accountability aspect, and a lot of that will have come from you. But so is this always something you encourage, even with like a home workout? Is this stuff people do through Zoom with each other, or do you encourage accountability programs in the home or between colleagues? Or
yeah, I mean, with the clients I work with, yes, absolutely. I'm going to give some accountability. That's part of my job as a coach, as a trainer.
Make sure they're getting shit
but
done,
I tell
basically.
my clients, yeah, exactly, yeah. But at the end of the day, and I tell my clients this, like, if you're relying on me for 100% of your accountability, like, I'm one person, like you need more than me. And so,
and it needs to be more important to you than it is to me as well. And I always find that's a hard one for some people to get. They're like, you should care more than me. I care a lot, but it's not mine. It's, if you miss a session, if you miss a call with me, it should annoy you. Because that's your investment. This is your life. It's your body. Do you know what I mean? I can only show you the door. You got to walk through it. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, like I said, getting them to structure their own support systems around them, in their day-to-day life through relationships with others, basically. For LEOs, that's why I say, like, if you're an LEO and, you recognize and understand that physical fitness is important, like, whoever you work with the closest, like, you should be talking with them and connecting with them and ensuring that the two of you hold each other accountable. You don't have to follow the same program. You don't have to do the same workouts, just as long as both of you are showing up every day, getting your training in, in addition to everything else that you need to do. That's the other thing I think that, going back to your question earlier, that I think LEOs maybe struggle with a little bit more than fire. I think in both cases, you need to take your health and your fitness and your performance. And when I say health, I mean physical and mental, of course. Yes. But you need to take that into your own hands and work on it outside of work. We'll say.
Yes. I always say to people, you should work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job. You've got to be working on yourself. Personal development, people think, oh, yeah, I'll take a course and I can do this thing to make me a better police officer. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but personal development should be personal to you, because wherever you go, if you leave this job tomorrow, if you get sacked, it's personal development is for you. You should always be working on you. And people struggle with that because they're like, oh, dude, that sounds very selfish. And I'm like, you can't help other people if you don't help yourself. It's got to start with you.
Oh.
And people struggle with that, especially especially women. I'm gonna point them out personally, especially mums as well. They're a bit of a bugger because they're like, oh no, I'm a giving person. I want to help her. Yeah, so does everybody else. Yeah, but if you are just ruined physically, mentally, financially, then who are you going to help? You got to look after yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And so we're comparing, I guess we'll say, fire to other occupations. Like, there are opportunities on the job to continue that personal development, whereas police, one of my best friends, he's a former police officer, and, he would say, like, when he's on shift, when he was on shift, he's like on 100% of the time.
100%.
Like, you have to kind of always be aware, always be kind of head on a swivel, and always be kind of assessing every situation everywhere. And, so it doesn't really give you an opportunity. There's not downtime like there is in a fire hall, where it's like, okay, you're in between calls. You have an opportunity now to, all the fire hall work is now complete. I have a little bit of time, some window of time, whether that's to do a workout or do some meditation or do some personal development stuff. You don't get those opportunities on the job. And that's where I think a lot of, medics, we'll say medics and LEOs particularly, might struggle, is because that is left to their having to be done on their own time. And as just emergency services, doesn't matter which, channel you're in. It's a physically and mentally exhausting job at times. And so
you onboard a lot of trauma when you're doing it. And I love that you mentioned that mental aspect as well. When you talk about helping people, sort of giving them tools to, take into their own hands and try and implement, what are sort of one or two of the initial sort of mental health, maybe assessments or tools that you encourage? You referenced meditation there. Is that something you find easy to guide people into, or do you guys use resources? What's a takeaway somebody could quickly implement if they wanted something that's not going to take them an hour? Do you know what I mean? But they sort of do that self-check.
Yeah. So typically when it comes to, I try to stay within my lane as a coach, but I do recognize the importance of obviously mental health. And so we'll always get them kickstarted, but if it's clear like they would benefit from working with a professional, whether it's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, whatever, a mental health professional will say, we are going to encourage them to do that as well.
And that's responsible,
whatever work they do with us. Yeah. But in terms of like the tools, the takeaways that I give most is, it looks different for everybody. But typically what I'll get clients to do, at least for the first while when I'm working with them, again, with kind of our more intensive programs, is, getting them to just start journaling to some extent. I usually will give them a list of questions, basically just saying, reflect on the day before, bring some self-awareness to how they feel and how they, what they're thinking and stuff like that. Just get clear every day. It doesn't have to be crazy. Guys that I work with typically struggle with this at first because they, are too cool for having a diary or journaling or something like that. But honestly, the impact it can have and just the mental clarity it can give you on just your operation and just where you stand in life, rather than just living life, you actually have some focus of like, okay, I'm here now. I want to be there in whatever aspect, whether it's fitness or mental health or career growth.
It's also a good way to acknowledge yourself and have a bit of appreciation and gratitude for the things around you. The opportunities you've created, the ways you've acknowledged your role or your partner, or just celebrating yourself for a couple of little wins. I said I was going to do these 3 things. Whether it's just a case of I said the gratitude aspect of setting yourself a target, knowing that you achieved it, and having that little celebrate, even if it's just, I wanted to drink 4 pints of water today. Oh yeah, whatever, that's ridiculous. Look, if you can't fucking do step 1, guys, there's no point in us talking about step 26. Don't start asking me about ridiculous supplements and 1 or 2 extra grams of macros and micros and proteins and creatine and whatever rubbish. You're not doing the basics. We said stretch for 5 minutes for 5 days, and you haven't done it. Do you know what I mean? So document it. Take that win, celebrate.
Yeah, man, you touched on so much there, is that like just gaining some clarity for sure. And I think that's where a lot of people fail too, when it comes to whether it's a fitness program or whatever it is they try and take on, they try and start on step 14 rather than step 1. Yeah. And, the clients I work with, I'll tell them right off the bat, I'm like, you're going to get fast results, but like, you have to trust me, and we're going to take things step by step. And if you can't execute on step 1, like there's no sense in executing.
And they're like, no, Brandon, I get 14. That for most people, but I'm like, I'm ready. I'm really ready for this. And that's the harsh, that, that's where you as a coach, I imagine you're just super disciplined and you're like, I get that. And I know you say you're disciplined, and I'm not saying you're not. This is it's not an argument. It's not a competition, but show me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's actually part of, heroic athletics, the H. So heroic is actually an acronym for the qualities we want to embody and we encourage our clients to embody. The H stands for humility, like be humble. Yeah. And if you think you're the greatest thing, you think you're king shit, great. Yeah. Hopefully we can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, 100% you're fine.
But if you think they're the best, awesome. Have the humility to be coached, because that's what's gonna, if you're here, you want to get better, and if you already think you're great, then I can't help you.
What are you doing there? You're stepping into a room where everybody has partially held up their hand and gone, hey, there's something I would like some support with. And it will be different for everybody. They'll all have different experiences, but we've very quickly got to recognize and acknowledge and celebrate everybody for saying, first and foremost, well done for reaching out for help. That's massive. You have opened up the door to let all of that help in. But if somebody's like, oh man, I've done a lot in the past, and if the first 10 minutes they're giving you their flipping CV of fitness, you're like, great, wonderful. What the fuck are you doing here? Are you teaching us? Are you teaching a class? You know what I mean? What can I help you with? You don't got to prove anything to me. You've come here for some help and support. I may not have the answer for you. Maybe I'm not the right coach, but you need to be able to hold your hand up and be, like you say, willing and accepting of it. I love that it's an acronym. So we've got H.
If you want the acronym, so
you got to hit me now. You got to say it.
Yeah. H stands for humility. E stands for exceptional effort. So I don't care if you're the best. I just care that you give your best. The R is responsibility. So it's just taking responsibility for yourself and for, your environment around you. So a case in point, little tidbit is, are you the type of person who, let's say you finish grocery shopping, you leave your grocery cart in the middle of the parking stall, or do you walk it the 20 yards back to the cart? If you're walking and you see a little piece of trash on the sidewalk, do you pick it up and put it in the trash bin, or do you pretend you don't see it? That responsibility aspect, and that's a lot of part of what I touch on with my clients.
Because how you do one thing is how you do everything as well. People will go, "Oh, Brandon, that's got nothing to do with it." It's got everything to do with it. It's got everything to do with it. In the same way, do you get up and do you make your bed in the morning? Do you turn around and have you started with the win? Have you started with that preparedness and that intentional approach to systematically winning the day? Yeah.
On that point too, a good book that I'm sure you probably read it too, is that Extreme Ownership.
Oh, Jocko Willink. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, brother, great book. Great book.
Yeah. And, it's kind of that same idea, is just, take ownership of yourself and your surroundings and
gets you away from that victim mentality as well, because it's so easy to go, well, what do you expect when Jeff works with me every day? What do you expect when I'm 53? Or what do you expect me to do in COVID? And a lot of these are a zero-sum game, because everyone's dealing with COVID. Okay, it's not a competition, and I'm not here to justify and validate anybody's reasons or my own. But when people go, I've got these taxes to pay and I've got COVID and I'm this, I'm like, that's the same for everybody. You've got to take up that responsibility and bring the controllables inside the room. Otherwise, you're just otherwise those excuses, they're there for everybody. If you wanted them, we could list off hundreds, but you've got to switch that round and say, I'm going to control the controllables, take responsibility for the things that I've got control of.
It's a much more empowering way to live that way. The O is optimism. So obviously the nature of first responders. Sometimes things can be pretty shitty at times. And so it's just planning for the worst, hoping for the best, taking the good where you can get it and trying to identify where the good is for
you've got to look for
first
it.
responders I work with. Yeah.
You've got to look for it. Especially in that environment where some stuff is, like you say, it's so goddamn negative. And the problem is, you can very quickly be surrounded by pessimists. And pessimists are right more often is the problem. Do you know what I mean? The pessimist will say something's going to go bad, and more often than not, they'll be right. But the optimist tends to be more successful because they're always swinging for the fence. Do you know what I mean? Whether they've failed 20 fitness programs before, they are going to swing for the fence this time. And they're just, it's like that optimism's got to be there. You've got to be looking for the wins. Otherwise, they'll pass you by.
Yeah, 100%. And that's part of what, I look to empower people I work with, and just everybody in general, is I always tell them, like, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
100%.
The I, inclusive, just, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
And then the C is being courage, which is just, having the courage, not even just the courage to, like, run into a situation that's dangerous, as a lot of first responders are like, I am courageous. It's having the courage to, like, be exposed, having the courage to be vulnerable. That takes a shit ton of courage.
It kind of comes full circle back to humility as well, doesn't it? I love it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but also well done for remembering the acronym. I don't know if you've got it written on the wall behind you. I thought that'd be a test.
No, I don't. No, like, I've spit it out as many times as I have.
Love that. I wanted to ask you about programs as well, because some people, maybe myself would be one of them, but a lot of people that have done a lot of different training in the past can so quickly just fall into the familiars. How essential is it, do you think? Because I'll be honest, I think up until maybe only 3 weeks ago, I wasn't following a program for maybe like 4 or 5 months. I was going through the motions and I was staying fit and healthy, but I wasn't getting the wins. It was getting a little bit repetitive. How important do you think a program is, whether or not somebody wants to lose weight, gain weight, whatever? How important is structure?
So Kate, actually, if you listen to our podcast, I guess shameless plug there. But Kate, she said it best. It's best acronym. You don't throw bricks into a field hoping to build a house. I
love that. I heard it. I did hear it the other day. Yeah, I think that was one of your recent ones, and it is great because I think you guys do your podcast, all three of you together, don't you?
Yeah. We'll kind of all chat. I between myself and Tyler, we look after the first responders. Kate typically works with moms and stuff, but So it's, in terms of importance of a program, like that's incredibly important. To some degree, again, everybody's different. I think, the first and foremost, we'll say the rule number one, the golden rule, is consistency wins everything. So even if you're not following a program like yourself, you will either you'll progress for a short period of time, or at least at bare minimum, you kind of stay even. You're not going to regress as long as you're consistent. Yeah. But if you are looking to progress, if you are looking to reach a goal, like you have to, I look at my role as a strength and conditioning coach. I take an individual's goal, and then I kind of reverse engineer the steps. Okay, where are they today? Where do they want to be, let's say 3 months from now or 6 months from now? And then and then I'll build the staircase to get them there. If all you're doing is just, throwing bricks, like I said, going to that analogy, if all you're doing is throwing bricks into the field, like you might build something, but it's probably not going to be a house. So if you have any sort of goals, even if you're just aiming to get better, like you need to have some sort of structure or plan. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, you're hitting the same move. Actually, that's not going to really progress you very far, as if you're doing the same thing every day. Having a plan ensures that you have balance in your training. You're identifying some weaknesses. You're not going to cause, you touched on it before with like LEOs, spend a lot of their day in a vehicle. There's some overuse injuries, there's some imbalance issues. And if you're not following a structured plan that is taking that into consideration, what will end up happening is obviously, injuries.
It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be sustainable.
No, not at all. And you're not going to progress in the ways that you want to progress.
Do you ever have challenges where somebody's head over heels in love with a certain aspect of fitness? For example, they'll say, I really enjoy whatever. I really enjoy running. I really enjoy lifting weights. But their goal is not perhaps aligned with that. And they say, I hate running, but I want to, work my way up to a 5K, or I want to put on a lot of muscle, but I don't like lifting weights. Something like that. How do you manage that? Is it just not cold, but does it have to be a blunt conversation, or do you have to pull people away from the things they love? Because it also has to be enjoyable, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. That's, first and foremost, it has to be enjoyable. And so usually what I'll do, again, it depends on the scope I'm working with somebody, but, we're going to identify things they like and things they don't like. And let's say, for example, they hate running, but they want to work up to a 5K. I might ask, okay, why the fuck do you want to do that?
Yeah, because also if you get the why behind it, then they might actually not even be what they think it is. They thought, I have to run or have to do a 5K to be fit. And you're like, oh, right, wait, so the goal was fitness. I thought you said the goal was 5K. Well, it is, because that means fitness, doesn't it? And you're like, no, it doesn't mean fitness. Fitness is massively varied. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah,
and it's dependent on the individual and what they're looking for. Scope of the people I work with. For example, I was working with one LEO, and she wanted to work up to a 10K. Same question. She wanted to work up to a 10K. Hated running, and I said, okay, well, why do you want to work up to a 10K? And she's like, that's kind of it. She wanted to be fit, and it mostly like she wanted to lose a little bit of weight, kind of tone up, and then of course be effective and perform well in her job. So after kind of getting to the bottom of that, I was just like, okay, you don't need to be running for miles every week. Like, I'm going to get you to sprint because you're an LEO and you need to be able to sprint. But we're going to work on strength training and just like proper nutritional habits. And lo and behold, she gets to her goal. So it's, I think understanding the why. But to your point, like I said, it has to be consistent. And the easiest way for it to be consistent for people is to ensure that it's enjoyable, and touching on what we touched on a long time ago, they have to have the environment, the support systems around them to encourage them to stay consistent. So if you have those three things, and then you have like what the goal is and understand why behind the goal, then you can kind of reverse engineer it. But I 100% think everybody should be following some sort of structured plan, because if it's not, you're just ultimately going to create imbalances, which is going to lead to preventable injuries down the road.
100%. I went and got various of the little bits of kit during the beginning of lockdown, and I've got a full gym of kit anyway, but I wanted to get outside of this old mindset of barbell, because I did a lot of barbell, and then I was playing with cables, but I wanted to do a lot more functional. because I just found it so much more enjoyable. And honestly, I think a lot of the functional kit is substantially cheaper, to be honest, than trying to get your hands on some racks and some plates and stuff. I was looking at on one of your other blogs, actually, and you were saying about the essentials for home workouts and stuff. What did honestly surprise me was one of the top ones you guys had in there was like a pull-up bar. And I'm a fairly fit and healthy guy, but I think pull-ups are flipping hard. I can maybe do 15, and that is probably even stretching the truth, to be honest with you. Pull-ups are bloody hard. I want you to talk me around home workout stuff, because I imagine you've had to transition to a lot of that for clients and trying to encourage them to buy kit. Kit's hard. It's expensive to come by. How creative have you been, and what's some of the top things that you've been encouraging people to get hold of?
Yeah. So if somebody's limited on equipment, yes, pull-up bar, whether it's a doorway pull-up bar or something they screw to the wall, something. The reason why is kind of my philosophy with training is there's different fundamental movement patterns, and the most difficult to mimic without some sort of pull-up bar is that vertical pull, right? It's hard to just do it anywhere in the house. A squat you can do anywhere in the house. A deadlift you can grab the end of your couch and do it. Like there's ways around those other movement patterns, but a vertical pull is really hard without some type of equipment.
There's only so many brooms you want to snap, putting them across the top of two chairs, and then you're just bored.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
like,
100%.
You can fall on your back so many times, and then you're like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of why now when it comes to pull-ups being hard, yes, absolutely. But the importance of it is huge. Obviously, from a firefighter's perspective, you might not be doing a pull-up every day in work, for work, but when you need to do it, you need to do it. And if you haven't been training to that, another kind of phrase I say is, you don't rise to a level of greatness, you fall to your level of training. So 100%. As long as you're training that, same thing with LEOs. If you're in a foot pursuit following a suspect, if they hop a fence, like you have to be able to get up and over that fence fairly quickly. And typically a suspect is in whatever jeans, t-shirt, something that allows them to move. An LEO is in they have their lopsided belts and they're got gear on. So you need to have that strength in that upper body pull. So pull-up bar is the first one, and then typically space or room is another difficulty, like especially for those living in apartment complexes and stuff like that. So I'll usually say pull-up bar, those adjustable dumbbells you can usually get for a couple $100, and then a sandbag. Like if you just go to a hardware store, grab
sandbags
$6 sandbag.
Great. They really are dirt cheap, and you can you get some bin bags or whatever. You can I'm going to fill them with sand. To be honest, people are like, oh, I can't get any sand. I'm just like, fill them with soil. Do you know what I mean? And then you can take a cup out. If you put it in a bag, it's not going to stink. It's not going to get all dirt inside the house. Get a thick canvas bag or something like that. And that's great. You can vary that up and down. And that, I love the fact that there's no handles on it for starters. So it's such great functional strength with your stabilization and everything that goes into that. I would personally flip them out. I mean, I've grown up around dumbbells, but since I've started using heavy bags, I love them because you just I feel like a kid when I'm playing with them. Yeah, and just you mentioned it. It's like it challenges stabilization. It's an awkward and you can typically go a little heavier. Anybody that's picked up 135 pound barbell and then picked up 135 pound sandbag, everybody will tell you the sandbag's heavier, far heavier.
And so and so it just has much more functional carryover to day-to-day demands on the job.
Plus the weight tends to shift and move. It tends to shift and move in there as well, and I think that is just a really cool aspect of it. Even just something as simple as you haven't got to press overhead. I love when I get really bored or I go into the gym and I can't really think of anything to do. I'll just get like the 50 kilo bag or something, and whilst I can't think of anything, I'll literally just pick it up, drop it over my shoulder, turn around. Pick it up, drop it over my shoulder, turn around. And I might spend half an hour doing that because I couldn't think of anything else to do. And to be honest, that would be a great workout. That'd be a great workout, and then I'm happy. I can just leave because my mind. Talk about mental health. I'm like struggle sometimes, and what I'll tend to do is I'll either just put a podcast on, or I'll like listen to a music track, but I'll listen to it on repeat, and people think that's really freaky. But I'll just listen to one track on a loop for like 30 minutes and just let my mind escape, and I can just. You only need like one bit of kit or a sandbag. Sorry, I went off on a tangent again. I'm terrible at that.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, you don't need much, and I think a lot of people. I've had numerous clients that were looking at getting a job with fire, getting a job with LEO as an LEO. And during the pandemic, like they started working with me in, March 2020 at the start of the pandemic. And a vast majority of them made it to getting the career, like passing the fitness test.
Awesome.
And, most of them, all they used were sandbag, pull-up bar, and a couple of them couldn't even get dumbbells, so I showed them how to make their own with like tool bags and sand.
Yeah.
So like if you're working in more austere environments or limited equipment options, you have to be creative, and that's where having support of a coach and somebody who has that experience of like, okay, this is what you're going to do instead. If you don't have that creativity yourself, that's where it really is beneficial. But I love a barbell too. I'm like you, I grew up with it, but you can do an awful lot without a barbell. And especially for fire, police, or paramedics. I mean, you don't need a barbell in order to be fit for your job or fit for duty.
A 200 kilo, 300 kilo deadlift is going to be bloody irrelevant in 99.9% of environments. And if you ever have to utilize your strength in that capacity, something else has gone tragically wrong, that you as an individual are being required to exert that amount of strength as a member of a team. So I agree, it's nice and sexy sometimes, but talking about general health, wellness, and functionality, you can get a cover model physique just doing bloody body weight, to be honest with you. People struggle with it and they think it's boring as hell, but you can really build up some fantastic, volume and intensity. And there's loads of ways of making, regressing and progressing movements without barely anything.
Yeah, I think, I generally, like, you look at calisthenics guys, they do just primarily body weight, and, some of those guys are pretty jacked. If I do look at the needs of first responders, I do recommend some sort of external loading of the body. And then, we can play with a lot of different things, whether it's in regards to tempo training or what have you. But there does need to be some sort of external loading. And the reason why I say that, you're a firefighter, how heavy is your equipment?
I think most of it from a manual handling perspective, they try and keep it below 25 kilos, but it's very unrealistic. The kit is below that. You're often you're lifting and moving up and down stairs, changing through planes of movement, and that's where manual handling goes out the bloody window, doesn't it? Kit is heavy. The ladders are bloody heavy. You're supposed to carry one length of hose, but they ain't going to cack it, so you've got to get two, and you've got to go for it because there's not enough people, and he's doing now. So get on with it.
Yeah. So, if all you're doing is bodyweight training for that job, I think there's a big miss, there's a big gap. And so that's where I say, yes, we'll say for the general population, if what you're looking for is for weight loss, yes, I could see, bodyweight only being an option. But even then, what I typically see or have seen through the pandemic is, they have no equipment. So trainers throw out all these bodyweight workouts, which is great. Like I understand it. But typically those programs have an excessive amount of needless and pointless volume, doing excessive amounts of squats and push-ups and this and that. And what can end up happening if your program is not well structured, you tend to get some people will experience joint pain, and
it's a lot of impact, isn't it? There's a lot of impact.
A lot of impact, a lot of overuse. Your joints kind of your tendons are taking a lot of extra needless work. And so I kind of agree with you on the body weight stuff. I do really strongly recommend somebody have something, and especially in the light of the pandemic, get your hands on a sandbag. If that's all you can get, $6 at a hardware store, you're fine. Like that.
Do you ever do much stuff with tires? Do you ever use tires at all?
Tires?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find, I love tires. They're big, awkward, so they're great for training. In a home training environment, it's
hard if you live in an apartment or something like that. You know,
a little more difficult.
She's not going to appreciate
you're not going to haul
dropping a truck tire in the lounge.
Nobody's going to want to have a tractor tire in their living room of 900 square foot apartment. But
I would happily do that if I lived alone, but I think even if I did do that, I would very quickly be living alone. So
yeah.
You put some stuff in there about resistance bands and stuff, and this is something I certainly do a lot with, because a lot of people think of them as predominantly rehab work. They're like, oh yeah, you've injured your rotator cuff, whatever, let's do some band work. But you can get some epic workouts just using bands. How have you found your experience with that, and do you encourage clients to use them?
Yeah, I absolutely encourage clients to use them. I think they can be great. Again, if all you're doing is hanging your hat on one thing, I think there's a miss. There's an opportunity for you to incorporate all things. And so, bands are just one tool of those others. And I kind of put things, if you go on that blog, and I obviously read it. So if you go down it, I put things in order of like, hey, if you're going to piecemeal your own home gym, this is the order in which you should pick up these items. Yeah. Based on obviously the clientele I work with, but bands again can be very beneficial. They can be effective in a prehab setting. Depending on the thickness of the band and the movement selection, you can develop some wicked strength. So for example, if you've ever done banded push-ups, that's going to,
you don't need to do many of them. They're bloody hard.
No, exactly. So, that's going to tax your triceps a lot more than just regular push-ups would, as well as obviously your chest, shoulders, stuff like that. So bands can be incredibly useful. And if all you have is bands, again, I wouldn't do all your movements or your whole workout with the bands. Maybe mix that body weight kind of together. Again, bands are a tool, just like a dumbbell. Like I would use them for a lot of movements. They're, something's better than nothing, but it's not a be all end all tool, if that makes sense.
You put in one of the recent ones about intensity as well, because people think, oh, every workout's got to be some sort of YouTube-worthy, balls to the wall, smashing it to death, high five, chest bump kind of workout. How do you manage people's intensity, certainly as they begin training, if you know what I mean, and not getting carried away into injury, I suppose? Yeah,
that I could go really deep onto that. So when it comes to intensity, intensity, the conversation needs to look different for everybody. And I think having some self-awareness and self-reflection on where you are at, not just overall, but just and what your habits are, but where you are at that day. So for example, for first responders, firefighters, you shouldn't be doing a soul crushing workout that's going to leave you completely taxed, your CNS completely blown up, and you sore in every square inch of your body. You shouldn't be doing that workout right before or even on shift. That a workout like that, again, should it be done from time to time? Absolutely. You should be going balls to wall, high intensity, assuming your movement patterns are correct. But if you're, that kind of workout should be left for, we'll say, days off or something like that. And, if you're too intense day after day, time after time, that's going to blow up your CNS. You're probably going to experience some preventable injuries. You're probably going to see regressed results. So, if you're trying, for example, if you're trying to lose some body fat or whatever, and you're doing these super intense workouts, you're basically effectively, potentially frying your hormones so that it's going to be next to impossible for you to actually lose that body fat. And so there needs to be...
There'll be too much stress in the body that the body will actually hold on to that fat as a survival mechanism, somewhere to store the cortisol, and it won't even let you lose the fat. And then you'll just get more and more frustrated. You do harder workouts. You won't sleep very well. And round the rabbit hole we go. That's a really dangerous and upsetting place for people to get to.
Yeah, and that's just the training stressors. If you take your job, your job is a stressor. So like that has to be taken into account too. And so if you're training to see results, like there needs to be some balance, and that's, there is such a thing as too intense. There is such a thing as not intense enough. Like there has to be some balance between the two. And, most days you want to be kind of in the middle. Some days maybe ramp up the intensity, other days ramp down the intensity. And really that comes down to, when you start your session each day, I usually tell people like answer these questions once you've warmed up. But, hit your warm up, whatever it is, 10, 15 minutes. And then answer the questions like, how did I sleep last night? What's my energy like today? What's my stress levels at? Am I stressed about relationships or work or finances or pandemics? Or am I feeling okay today? What's my, what did I say? Sleep, stress, energy.
Yeah.
How sore am I from the day before? Just kind of self-reflect on like where you're at today, post warm-up, and then kind of decide how you're going to attack the rest of the workout. Is it going to be super intense? Is it going to be less intense because I'm super sore and I'm overstressed and I'm underslept? Or is it, am I kind of in the, kind of feel so and maybe I'm just going to float in the middle today. But I think it's incredibly important to not go overboard on the intensity, because that can actually work against you in multiple different areas. Yeah.
So we're talking a little bit, I suppose, about recovery there, and this is something I've put a lot more time into learning about over maybe only the past 5 years, really, because it was before I would just take way too much protein of every single form, and it would coupled with all sorts of bad, nasty stuff, performance enhancers that I did maybe 10 years ago, and I didn't really, I had a really bad mindset of, let's just go for it, pain is my friend and blah, 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 blah. And stupid little, sayings that people can pick up that just digs you in. I always say people now, whenever you're doing a workout, don't dig the hole so deep you can't climb out of it after each workout. Do you know what I mean? You want to go down there, do the work, but know that you can climb back out of it. You don't want to head into the next workout and everything is really hurt and everything's really, really sore. And this kind of got me onto things like all the recovery and stretching. First started doing yoga and stuff like that, but I've been head over heels in love with ice baths and ice showers in the last couple of years. And I got my own one put in a year or so ago, and I've been ice bathing every day. Is that something you've ever used? How do you find it? Because I think there's a huge mental aspect to that as well. I know it's not easy for people to do, but
that's a great strategy. There's tons of recovery protocols. First and foremost, I usually start at sleep with clients I work with. Like, where's your sleep at? Let's try and optimize that a little bit. But then you can kind of, once that's kind of good, we'll say, nobody's perfect, but once it's better, then you can kind of get into the jiggy shit with ice baths and with different recovery protocols. Growing up as an athlete, ice baths were a normal thing to me. So when it kind of started becoming more culturally normal, I was just like, this has been around for years. Like, what are you guys talking about?
The people think they've reinvented the wheel, but even like decades and decades, tribes and people used to dunk their children into these, icy lakes to harden their immune system and stuff. But it has had a whole sort of, a lot of things are quite cyclic in this respect, aren't they? That's how we continue to pretend to reinvent the wheel in terms of fitness. Do you ever feel a responsibility as a coach to try and get overly complex and sex it up? And is there sometimes, do people sometimes surprised? I know you've already sort of spoken around it, of nailing the fundamentals, just keeping it simple.
I think there needs to be an element of both, to be honest. Like I said, like most of the clients that I work with, and everybody in general, like we always want to do the jiggy stuff and work on the more complicated, complex things that, look good for the gram. And if I look at like the marketing aspect of stuff, sex sells. That's all really what it is. So like, if you can make something look sexy, people are going to latch onto it. But I do really preach the importance of fundamentals, like that. If your foundation is weak, like everything else we build on top of it is going to be shit. So, we need to nail the fundamentals. We need to get clear on that. And then, not to say we aren't going to do the jiggy stuff. We can, but like not at the expense of the fundamentals, So getting the basics and like I said, starting things off in, manageable steps. Like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get you to do this week. The clients I've had the most success with on, we'll say nutrition coaching, we're touching on like very basic stuff. And, to the point where, I have a client who she's waiting on some diagnosis from her doctors. But just by changing her nutrition over the past 8 weeks, like her energy levels are like substantially higher than where she was. She found out she was under eating substantially. And, when I first had a consultation with her, she's just like, oh, I eat health. Most people would say that without really realizing, what marketing has told you over the years of like 100%. What eating healthy is versus what actually it is very different. And so, we work on that foundation first, and then we can, do the jiggy stuff. And now she's doing some pretty cool stuff and we're going into like nutrient timing and stuff like that. But again, and people jump to that before getting the fundamentals down first. And that's why people fail.
Like hang their hat on, oh no, I've got this really incredibly, and you're like, yeah, absolutely. That thing may be an additional factor for you that we can calibrate for, but that doesn't take away from the fundamentals that we're going to discuss, because these are, even whether you're a bloody diabetic or, you've got other challenging health conditions, these fundamentals will still apply. Whereas a lot of people, and I feel it sometimes when people say, oh no, I'm waiting for my special shakes to come from Amazon, or I'm waiting for these pills that my friend Jess takes. And you're like, fucking hell, what are you doing? So, I mean, you've not even covered these fundamentals. Whatever you throw into the cocktail from here on out is not going to work.
100%. Like you need to get the basics down. Like what I always tell people, like adults don't want to learn from scratch again. We as adults think because we're an adult, like we should just pick things up right away. You don't learn to walk before you can crawl. You don't learn to crawl before you learn to roll over. Like there's a step by step process. There's certain steps that need to happen. You don't give a 14-year-old a kid keys to the car and say, okay, jump onto the highway or freeway, and this is where you're going to learn how to drive. Like you're going to take them to an empty parking lot. You're going to teach them how to drive, and you're going to progress from there. So it's the same thing with literally anything you want to do in life. Like you got to start at square one. And the problem is because fitness and nutrition has been, done since day one. People have been active or healthy.
I've been eating food since I was very young. And like you say, you can get away with you can get results doing the wrong thing. Sometimes, like somebody go, oh yeah, she just starves herself for 4 days a week and then eats for 3 days a week. You're like, that's not sustainable. Yeah, but she's getting results. I know she's getting results. You can get results in the gym with bad techniques, but eventually it's going to catch up with you, and the injury is going to come. The disc will go pop, or she'll collapse because of just general malnutrition because she wasn't bloody drinking or eating properly. Nutrient dense and all that. Yeah.
So, you need to have that foundation first, and I think a lot of people think they have the foundation, but it's not actually there. And as a coach, I'm going to poke holes in their foundation to see, how strong is it? And if it's not strong, that's where we're going to start. We're going to work on that. If it is a strong foundation, then we can do the jiggy stuff. But it really and that's where that, humility comes in. It's like you need to
circle back.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost like it makes sense. There's a perfect. It's not thrown together.
It's almost like I've been doing this 20 years. Yeah.
Almost. No, man, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing those aspects with you. I know you've got clients. I mean, we've got 45 or so countries listening on the podcast now, and I know you guys do some very specific stuff, because we talk about lots of aspects of the emergency services, but where can people hear a little bit more? Because I know you guys have got your own podcast and it's very specific with some huge takeaways. We've tried to brush over, maybe we've sort of puddle jumped through a few different topics there, but you go deep into some stuff. Where can people learn a bit more about what you do?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to talk with other people who are trying to empower others throughout the industry. I think for myself and our team, if you're looking at connecting with us, heroicathletics.com, or you can check out our podcast, the Heroic Podcast. The best two channels, obviously, we're on Instagram, heroic.athletic. Heroicathletics.com is probably the best place to start, and then you can kind of see the different free resources we have, and obviously the programs we offer for various first responders.
Beautiful. I wanted to just catch you out with a final question. I know we didn't necessarily speak about this before, but sometimes it throws something awesome into the mix. There's so much information out there at the minute, both in health and fitness, in anything. And I wanted to ask you, if you had like a billboard that was in the sky for everyone on earth to see, what message do you think people need to really hear and feel at the minute? What would be the one thing?
The one message. So I actually maybe tweeted it. This would probably be a good place to go. Is the phrase I will say is like the fault or the failure of programs and of athletes and first responders, people looking to improve. The failure is not the lack of information. It's the lack of quality information and the ability to apply it. And so the best way to do that is to link up with a professional, whether it's yourself or a coach or somebody you know who is educated, who has proven that they can help others like you take the journey that you want to go on. Another phrase is like, so I'm big into to Star Wars and stuff like that, but just kind of like, if you look at any superhero movie or anything, like the hero doesn't become the hero until they like link up with some type of mentor.
Yes.
And so if you want to become the hero, if you want to see progress, like you have to find whoever that is for you. Like you have to find somebody, and it's the classical hero's journey. So,
and that's humility again. You know, when the student is ready, if you will, then the teacher will emerge.
Yep, exactly. So, I think seeking out some type of mentor to some degree, it doesn't matter, whether it's fitness or health or business, if you're looking at that, trying to learn from others,
and also knowing that they may not be able to take you to step 10, but also you're only at step 0. So sometimes getting a coach that can take you to step 3. I mean, I've only coached professional athletes maybe twice in my life, and I honestly feel I don't do them justice all the time because I've got a very narrow bandwidth of things that I'm an expert in, and it's taken me a long time to have that self-awareness and be honest with people that if they're trying to go from 95% to 100%, I'm not the coach for them. But like you've said, there's so many lessons to learn with the fundamentals. If you just have somebody that can take you from step 1 to 3, and then that's okay. People will graduate, quote unquote, graduate from your guidance and your mentorship, and then move on, as the superhero will in himself as well. Yeah,
100%. Look at Harry Potter, right? Yeah. His first mentor was Hagrid. Hagrid was his first mentor, and then he graduated from Hagrid, and Dumbledore became a mentor. So like exactly that. Like you don't have to like find the perfect mentor, as long as it's somebody you trust that is at least going to be able to take you a couple of steps at minimum. That's kind of a good place to start. And then like I've referred clients that I've worked with to other coaches or trainers or when their needs are beyond the scope of what I want or can provide, then yeah.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming and sharing that with us, my man. And may the force be with you, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Take it easy, brother. See you soon.
Yeah, you too. See ya.
Well, that was my conversation with Brandon. I loved the way he was breaking down those 5 elements, training, nutrition, mindset, recovery, environment. Having those acronyms, the mnemonics. We all love that. I don't know, something about the emergency services. We like a good old acronym. Super interesting dude. I want to thank him again and everybody else at the Heroic Athletics team. Obviously, there is Brandon, there is Kate, and there is Tyler. They're doing some incredible work over there, guys. Thank you once again for coming back to the Firefighters Podcast. I hope you were able to take some nuggets from this one, some fitness, some mindset, some nutrition, some thoughts, a different way to go about your world. And even if you just took that little bit of motivation, optimism, curiosity to kick ass as you move into the rest of your week, then it was mission accomplished. Thank you once again for taking time out of your valuable day to be here with me and Brandon and listen in and support the emergency services all over the world. I look forward to seeing you next time back here on the Firefighters Podcast.